Hello, Lisa here. Welcome back to my channel. I am so excited to be bringing you this video today. Now, I recognize that there are other creators out there making these videos right now about this deck because it's a new launch. However, I still have to make mine because I have so much to talk about. But first, I want to tell you a little bit about how the Tarot of the Divine and the Beneath the Moon book by Yoshi Yoshitani came into my life. So some months ago, a subscriber here of the channel reached out to me and offered to pre-order me this deck. She just said she wanted to say thank you for the content I provide and that she really appreciated what I was doing here. And out of the blue, she's like, so I'd like to pre-order this for you. And it was the most fun thing. It totally made my entire month. It was, I couldn't even imagine somebody like pre-ordering me something. It was so special that she did that. So thank you, Gina. I really appreciate you. I thought that was the sweetest. And to top it all off, she pre-ordered me the deck. And then right around the same time as the deck was about to release, she messaged me again and she said, oh, I found out there's a book that goes into more detail. So I've gone ahead and ordered you that too. And I was like, oh my goodness. It was such a sweet thing to do. I was blown away. So again, thank you. I am so excited to be bringing this into my collection. I have been already doing a bunch of reading in the book. I've got a lot to say, but just so you guys know, what I'm going to be focusing on in this review and sort of walkthrough, I guess I can't call it a review since I haven't worked with the deck yet, but I would like to focus on the usability of this deck. I am of course going to be talking about the sort of fairy tale myths and stories that inspired the deck, but I want to be talking about also how the deck could read out of the box for somebody who's maybe not interested in the stories, doesn't necessarily see themselves spending a lot of time studying those stories or diving into those stories. So I'm going to look at the deck sort of at face value. That isn't to say that that's necessarily even what the creator intended, but for me, for a deck to be really usable, it needs to work at face value, even if there's more richness to be found within the stories. So that is the sort of approach I'm going to take to the card by card walkthrough, just so you know that going in. We're going to talk about the artwork, what I see in the artwork, stories aside. That being said, I do want to talk briefly about the book. So the book is published separately. So I think are they even by the same publisher? They are not. So the book is published by 10-Speed Press, which is 10speed.com. And the deck is published by Clarkson Potter Publishers, which is an imprint of Penguin Random House. So they are published by two separate organizations, but obviously Beneath the Moon focuses on the stories. And what I think is really special is that this book actually does contain all of the stories for all of the cards. So you do have a full list of all of the stories. Now, I'm going to use the word story here carefully because I think it's really important to know going into this deck that what the author and creator of this deck has done with the story element is tried to come up with a short synopsis of the mythology, story, or folklore surrounding the deity, the divine figure, or the story in question. So whereas with a story like Jack and the Beanstalk, which has been told and retold again and again and again in a very clear way by sort of one culture primarily, it's very clear and concise. But for some of these other stories, while the story itself still reads really beautifully, and I've read about half this book, by the way, by now I'm on to page 79 out of 160 or so. Yeah. So I'm about halfway, I'm literally almost exactly halfway through the book right now, and I can tell you that the stories that come from cultures I'm less familiar with, stories that I haven't maybe heard as many times, you can tell that the author made an effort to pull bits and pieces of this story from where they could find it to give you the most comprehensive sort of summary of the story. And I don't think this is a book that I would personally recommend for full, deep accuracy of all of these historic myths. I think this is more meant to be kind of like an appetizer, if that makes any sense. Like if you're flipping through the book or the deck and you stumble on a story like The Nightingale, which states that it's from China potentially and is a Danish fairy tale, I think it's worth actually looking at other sources, especially from that specific culture or from that specific region, to get a more authentic version of the story. It actually, in a way, reminds me of Neil Gaiman's Norse mythology book. Neil Gaiman did his best, or Gaiman did his best, to create a story, but he had to pull bits and pieces from various sources to put together a story that felt cohesive to read. And I don't think that always makes things the most perfectly accurate as possible. So just keep that in mind. If you're interested in any of these stories, I highly, highly recommend diving a little deeper and exploring them in other ways and not just taking this and going, oh, okay, that's the story then, and that's all there is to it. Because I think there's no way to do that and to tell 78 stories in a book that is 160 pages and really do each story proper justice. But I think as far as like an appetizer for each story, it's really handled quite beautifully. And the author clearly is doing her best to treat the subject with reverence, and I really appreciated that. So from what I've read so far, really enjoying it. But again, just keeping it in its proper perspective, I think really, really helps. The book itself is actually beautiful, and I love that you get these like full color illustrations, and these are the same illustrations you'll see in the tarot deck. And I really, really like this. This is a beautiful book in its own right for its own purpose, and I don't think you need this to work with the deck from what I've seen so far, but I love the ability to deep dive. So that's what I have to say about this. I don't know if I'll reach back for this by the end of the video or not. I'm going to play it by ear. But let's talk about the deck. So Tarot of the Divine, a deck and guidebook inspired by deities, folklore, and fairy tales from around the world. And the box is gorgeous. So hopefully my light shows, but you can see there's a bit of texture on the box as well as some gold foil accents. Really, really beautiful. And on the back it says, the path to enlightenment is unique for each of us, but many of the lessons we learn are shared stories passed among cultures and generations. Tarot of the Divine brings traditional tarot archetypes to life with a lustrous series of fables, including The Little Mermaid, Aladdin, The Crane Wife, Sleeping Beauty, King Arthur, and the stories of many lesser-known legends and deities from all over the world. Just as the tarot provides ways to interpret the world around us, so too do these illuminating folk tales. And when the box opens, you'll notice it has this sort of like, I'm going to show it from the side. It has this hinge style open. So it's a clamshell box, but it's a little different than the other clamshell boxes you might have seen in independent decks, for example. And I right away knew what this packaging reminded me of. So I'm going to pull out another deck, if I can do it without falling down. There we go. So this is my Affirmators Tarot. And this is actually by knockknockstuff.com. I will have a link to this deck down below. I also have a discount code for the Affirmators line, which is, I believe, supportive 25. It gives you 25% off at Knock Knock Stuff. I don't earn a commission from that. That's just something that they did. But anyway, I'm digressing, and it's late and I'm babbly. It's not identical, but if you notice, they're different sizes. But the Affirmators box has the same sort of style opening. It opens like that. And this one has a little thumb hole hinge on it, and this one does not. And this one feels a little bit more textured, but they both have gold foil accents, and the feel of these boxes is very, very similar. And that made me wonder if the cardstock was going to be similar. So we're going to talk about that in a second. And a short answer, yes and no. I know, because confusing. But let's get in here. So when you first open it up, you have the guidebook that comes with the deck. I do think this is all you need to read with this deck. I've done a little flip through. I cheated a bit and kind of went through this. You get a little teeny little teaser about the story, but it does focus on the meaning of the card, and you do get full color images all throughout this guidebook, which I think is great. So that's, I think, all you need. You don't need to buy this Beneath the Moon, but man, I've really been enjoying this. So anyways, let's get into the cards. So we'll talk about cardstock. Take this little plasticky dude off. Oh, and there is a ribbon to lift the deck out of the box. I won't be keeping the deck in this box, but it's a really nice, like, sturdy, thick, hard box. You could definitely do that. So let's get that out of the way. Okay, so cardstock. First of all, okay, sorry. Hello to these backings. Are they not stunning? With the moon faces, these are probably one of my favorite card backs of all time. I'm really, really loving these. But I wanted to do a quick comparison because if you've touched, handled, played with the Affirmators Tarot, then the first thing I want to point out is that the texture and the feel of the cards, to me, is very, very similar. Now this one has some like embossing, like where it's like kind of pressed in where the letters and the cups and the wands and things are, whereas this one is just smooth. But the feel of it is a linen finish, but the feel of the linen, it's kind of almost, it almost feels plasticky in a weird way, but the plasticky coating that's on here on this linen finish makes the cards feel practically indestructible. Like this deck feels like it's going to hold up really well. And that's how I feel about my Affirmators Tarot. Now I will say the Affirmators Tarot cardstock is pretty thin. And I feel like the Tarot of the Divine is much thicker, right? Like much thicker. And yet, even though this one is so thin, it shuffles beautifully. I have a feeling that this will also shuffle really, really well. But I'm really excited about the cardstock. I think it's going to hold up really well. And I also think it's going to, well, let's just cheat. Let's just do a little pre-shuffle. I'm not going to bridge it because I want to be able to read the cards, but, or take you through the cards. But yeah, it looks like it's going to shuffle super nice. Okay, cardstock aside, I can put away my affirmators now. But that is what this deck reminded me of when I opened it and spotted that cardstock. And when I saw this packaging, I knew. Like, I was like, okay, that's what that's going to be like. And I love it. So, very excited. All right. Sorry, I'm still very babbly. Okay, let's do a little zoom in and flip through. I'm going to be talking about what I see in the cards. Again, stories aside, because I think that's what I want to know about a deck like this, is how does it read stories, like stories aside, notwithstanding. You know, is the imagery going to stand on its own, essentially? So here we have the Fool, and we have a mermaid that's sort of looking out at a castle. You get this idea of embarking on something new, of taking a chance. She's on the cliffside. Totally works for me, for the Fool. Here we have a Magician, and we have the wand up high and the hand down low. So you have that as above, so below, and you have all this growth in front. There's also a sense of magic in general about this card. So again, that works for me for a Magician. The High Priestess, yes. Okay, so I love that she is sitting in front of this crescent moon in the background, and there's these curtains on either side. So there's a similar sort of layout to this image, or I guess, what's the word I'm looking for? A similar setting to our traditional Rider-Waite-Smith High Priestess. We have the sort of veil in front of her face, and she's holding a book. So again, those traditional Rider-Waite-Smith symbols, I think, are really there. So we're just going to do that through the whole deck. The Empress, I love this. And we're talking about tradition, and we're talking about sort of honor and respect of tradition, and those sort of that sort of lineage or spiritual lineage. I think this card works really well for that. Yes. So the Emperor, we have the red cloak, we have the armor. Again, strong Emperor vibes here. I'm going to just keep saying that. Oh, wait, you guys. I was speaking to tradition with our Empress. Let me back up. I was thinking Hierophant when I was looking at her. So let's revisit this card briefly. So as an Empress, let me cleanse my mental palette for a moment. So as an Empress, lots of flowers, lush garden, the heart focus with her hands in front of her heart. Yes, still works. Okay, I just had to do a check-in with myself because I was totally thinking Hierophant. Here's our Hierophant. And this is really cool. So we have this buffalo skull in front, buffalo or bull skull in front. You have this sort of perspective of almost looking up at this figure as if she is somebody with wisdom to impart. I think that works for me. I don't see a key or any kind of key symbology, but again, we're seeing a much different culture represented here than we would typically see in like a popish kind of Hierophant. But I think that still works for me. Okay, well, I know this is Beauty and the Beast for sure. Like, this is probably The Little Mermaid. I'm still trying not to take it into account, but it's kind of hard in this case because I know that story so well. But for the lovers, we see somebody here embracing a beast. It's hard to divest of the story in this image, but of course it works for me. If you are even remotely familiar with the concept of the Beauty and the Beast, and I'm pretty sure this is Beauty and the Beast. It's gotta be. If you're familiar with that concept, this very much works. But it also speaks to sort of alchemy of opposites here too. You have the red and the white in contrast, so that also is a kind of a cool side note about this image. The Chariot, yes. Chariot is more like a boat being driven by fish, but again, still works. You see a very confident person here. He's not holding on to any reins, although the fish seem to still be strapped in somehow to the boat. Or actually, no, the fish seem to be holding the sort of cords in their mouths. I don't know what's the right anatomy for fish mouths. Is that right? Anyway, but he is not micromanaging that process, right? He's just focusing straight ahead, he or she. In the Strength card, here we see somebody, oh, I love this. There's like this embracing of this creature. She's got her foot kind of gently on the flank of this creature. It almost looks like an alligator with like a lion and an alligator at the same time. Definitely has the situation handled, but you don't see like over forceful energy, which I like. Oh man, this Hermit card is so beautiful. Definitely full on Hermit vibes here, but I am loving this white stag in the background, and that to me speaks immediately to spiritual enlightenment or spiritual knowledge. I'm immediately thinking of the Algiz rune in the runes. This is giving me all kinds of wonderful feelings. Okay, I freaking love this Wheel of Fortune. We have a spider web sort of energy in the back, and we have an 4 legs and 4-armed like figure here. I don't know who this figure is, but I really love the imagery. You almost get this like spider-like person here. I don't think this story is one I've read yet. I could be mistaken though, because I think there's something about this person being kind of related to spider. But I do love this energy. I love the sort of aesthetics of the card and how you get that wheel feeling. But also with the concept of spider and Wheel of Fortune, to me, there's also this idea of like sometimes you're the spider and sometimes you're the fly kind of thing happening here with change and with abrupt things that happen in our lives, or even not abrupt, but just things we don't have control over. There can sometimes be that powerless feeling. So that imagery still works for me. I think this is such a clean, crisp justice card. Yeah, this totally works. She's not holding scales. What's she holding? I have to bring it up to my actual face here. Nope, can't tell. She's got like a sword and it looks like almost like a medal that she's holding. And she's standing on a yin-yang here symbol in blue and red at her feet. I'm just randomly picking genders, you guys, because I really have no idea. These could be totally gender non-specific folks. So please keep that in mind. But yeah, this is really cool. Oh, love this Hanged Man. You can't see what she's being hanged, like you don't see any rope or any indication that she's being hanged, but you get that same perspective. And you also get a sense of peace on her expression. I love that. I enjoy this death card so much. You get this feeling of like peeking behind the curtain, right? Like that's actually what she's doing. And you have this figure of like death here. And this idea almost that she's like ready for the adventure, like she's welcoming that shift. She's ready to engage with death, not just like hide from it or anything. Love that. Beautiful image for Temperance. I love this. We still have 1 foot in water and 1 foot on land, but it's a very different image. I don't think I've read about this one yet either, but I have some things tickling at my memory about who this figure might be. I just don't want to make any guesses without consulting the book. So we're going to keep going through and we'll look at the book separately. But I love this image. I think it's beautiful. It feels very balanced and peaceful, which I like in my Temperance cards. This works fantastic for the Devil. We have like this sort of dark woods. We have this flaming serpent kind of coming right at you. I think that's right on point for the Devil. Tower looks like a tower. I'm digging it. I'm thinking I think I might have read this one already. This is Rapunzel. But even still, it's a tower. The lightning is hitting it. People are falling. Definitely works. There's some brambles at the bottom. Yeah. This card almost made me cry when I first looked at it because there's so much sort of sadness on the expression of this person here holding this little baby goat. It's the sweetest, cutest image, but also very heartfelt. We have a very traditional star formation in the sky here. And reading the story just added to the depth of meaning. But I feel like the image itself really works. It's like somebody's maybe been through a hard time and they're looking up to the star and finding their hope again. And you can really see that the way this is illustrated. The moon. This is of course the card from the image from the box. And this is just beautiful. I have read this story and it's stunning. But here we just see, like if I just take it at face value, we have the water represented here. We have a couple creatures here at the side of the water. So these look almost like, they look like kind of like a cross between a raccoon and a fox. I don't know what these are supposed to be. But I love this idea of sort of traveling over the water, like this journey over water with the big moon in the background. I think that really works with the traditional meaning of the moon. I also love the lotuses here in the water because of course lotuses emerge from that deeper water and from the mud, and there you can work with that imagery as well. So I really enjoy that. The sun. This is great. I love me a good sun card, but I don't need a lot imagery-wise in the sun card for me. I actually kind of sometimes miss the naked baby in these cards because I have so many associations with what that means to me personally. It's actually cool because the sun seems to be made up of a snake that's gone around in a circle. And I think this is Osiris. I'm really bad at Egyptian deity, but I think that might be Osiris. Might be a different Egyptian god. Well, anyways. Well, Osiris is a sun god. It would make sense if it's Osiris. Well, there we go. Still works. Love this imagery for Judgment. And I think the reason I like it so much is because here we have somebody who looks like they're being lifted up by clouds. So you get that sense of sort of elevation or enlightenment. And particularly, I think, enlightenment, because up here with this figure, instead of an angel, we have this like glowing lotus flower. And to me, that's what that's speaking of, is like stepping into the next phase, leveling up spiritually, so to speak. Love that. Love, 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 love. This is just a fun world card. It's funny because it's a pair of OF people, and I'm typically used to seeing one sort of hermaphroditic or gender non-specific individual in the world card. Sometimes just a woman-looking figure, but I'm used to seeing just the single person, and here we have a couple who are dancing together or celebrating together. So it works. It's probably, I think I would have preferred to see a solo figure here just for that cohesion with the traditional tarot, but you still have that sort of circular shape here with the way that the art is done. So I can still see it, and there is a dance on this sort of single point. These are, oh, this was these are gourds, and there is like a romantic story associated with this card as well. So that's interesting. So I need to dive a little deeper into this one, I think. Okay, a lot of the minors, I don't think I've read a lot of. I guess it's all a mix because the book is alphabetical by the name of the story. So I've read some stories because I'm about halfway through. So I've read some stories minor and major. So Ace of Cups, that works imagery-wise. That totally works. There's like this nice full cup being filled even further. That works. I cannot wait to read this story. I haven't read it yet, but it is so tender, these two men in this image, and it makes me so dang happy to look at this. And I don't know why, but I really love when I see same-sex kind of connection, even if it's not romantic. I don't know the story again, but same-sex connection in the Two of Cups makes me really happy. And I really like that we have some maybe not so like video game beautiful figures here. We have some really husky guys, and I think that's awesome in this image. I don't know the story, but I love the way they're holding hands and their foreheads are touching. It's just very tender. I love that. Fantastic Three of Cups. These girls all celebrating and dancing with their cups raised. Totally works. Four of Cups. So here we have these three really beautiful cups in front and a fourth cup that's being neglected or ignored in the back. And you can take this a number of ways, but that imagery works for the Four of Cups. Perfect Rider-Waite-Smith clone-ish kind of depiction here of a figure crying over the three spilled glasses or the three fallen glasses. Interestingly, you can see an arm reaching up, taking hold of this figure's hair, which is super interesting. I haven't read the story yet, so I don't know which one it is. The Six of Cups, like this is so Rider-Waite-Smith. Again, this was what I was hoping for from this deck, is that the imagery would speak to the meaning so that we could weave in the story or not, depending on our memory for the story or how, because I want to be able to pull this deck out and just read with it, right? So I love this. This really works for the Six of Cups. The Seven of Cups with all of these like little wishing lamps all in the air. Obviously that's Aladdin. I shouldn't say obviously, but that one is Aladdin. I've encountered that story, and it also looks like an Aladdin story. Eight of Cups. I don't think I know the story for this one, but very classic Rider-Waite-Smith imagery. Really beautiful. And I love the style of this art. I mean, this is one of those things where I think you either really are going to like this style or you're not going to be drawn to it at all. This Nine of Cups could potentially be, and I haven't read the story, I don't think I've read this story, but it looks like two women here, which makes me really happy because Nine of Cups is one of my sort of deal breaker cards. It's one I really have to like. I'm almost worried about reading the story in case it wrecks this for me, but I love this image. I think it's really beautiful. And the Ten of Cups. We have sort of a couple up here, some other family perhaps down at the bottom. I like that this could speak of blended families depending on how you want to look at this imagery. Again, I'm not speaking to the story because I don't know which story it is, but that works for me. Sweet Page of Cups. I love the little bunny down here. It looks like the bunny might be up to some mischief with this little string. But that's a very pagey, Page of Cupsy Page of Cups, if you know what I mean. The Knight of Cups standing in the water. Love, love, love. Water? Or yeah, I think that's water. Looks like it's a cold environment, but also that looks like water. Beautiful Queen of Cups. Just breathtaking. And King of Cups is a dragon-y figure. That's cool. So this one, I think I did read the story. Yeah. So this is about a boy who swallows a pearl and becomes a dragon. That's all I remember. But it was a very like a tale about the fact that he became a dragon was like a really, really good thing. So it was a victorious kind of feeling. It was like a leadership kind of feeling. I like that. The Ace of Coins, this one I remembered because this is Jack and the Beanstalk. Love it. And just holding that coin, right? It's nice that they have him holding a coin here and not a magic bean, although essentially that is the story and what it represents. So I like that. Very readable. And the Two of Coins here, I was like, do I see juggling? Yes, only it's almost like she's juggling two children. One child has like a human top and like a bear bottom, and the other child has a bear top and a human bottom. That looks like it'd be a handful, and there'd be a lot to manage, so that visually works. The Three of Coins. So I've read this story. We have sort of a teacher style figure, and we have sort of a, I guess, disciplinary style figure and a child who learns. There's actually a lot of layers here with the story, but visually we see three figures. I wish this had just a bit more of that sort of visual nod to the study or the growth or the learning or the collaboration in this card. It's a little bit of a stretch for me visually, but I think based on the story, it works really, really well. But this is one where, I mean, you know it's Three of Coins. You could just go off of memory, but it's not quite as Rider-Waite-Smith in the way that it's shown here, which is fine. As long as those cards aren't the majority, then I will hopefully remember the stories and be able to, you know, not lean too heavily into just memory when I'm pulling the cards. Four of Coins. I love this with this. This is a story about the condor, and he's kind of coveted and held on to this woman, basically against her will, but there's like a covetousness kind of energy to this and like a not wanting to let it go or share. Totally works. This is so Rider-Waite-Smith. I haven't encountered this story, but like this is what I mean, is that this is going to be about a story or a mythological creature or something, but in the image it's so classic Rider-Waite-Smith that I like that because it just makes it very readable. Six of Coins, same here. This is about, I forget what this is called, but essentially this woman was given a basket of insects to eat because she was starving, and she decided instead that she was old and the insects were young, so she decided to free them and not eat them, and they remembered her and they returned a favor to her later. And that's all I'll say about that because it's more in depth than that, but definitely even visually here you see the generosity, right? You see her, like my first impression looking at this art would be that she's giving all these little insects coins, so there's that generosity element. So even without the story, I feel like I'd get that helping energy that this card can have. The Seven of Coins. This one's another one that's a little more ambiguous, and I have not encountered the story yet. I know what the Seven of Coins means, but it does look like they're sort of sitting over a fire, waiting to see how things are going to turn out, question mark. I guess that's where I'd go with that visual if I was just taking it at face value. The Eight of Coins. I don't think I've encountered the story, but I think I recognize the story, and I think she's making... I think she's trying to save, yeah, her feet are bleeding and her hands are bleeding, and I think she's working with thistle, or not thistle, some kind of pokey plant to make something. Her brothers have turned into the swans. I can't remember what the story is called, but I think that's what this one is. And I think that works for the Eight of Coins. It's a little more grueling than we might normally see, but you definitely see her making pentacles over and over again, so even not knowing the story, you can dive into that image. I actually love this Nine of Coins. It's like a dude, he's super happy, he's got his big watermelon, he's got a big watermelon harvest in front of him. I think that super works. I have read the story and there's a little more to it, but visually this works really well. And the Ten of Coins definitely have generations here. It seems like there's like a dog human as one of the generations, but there's lots of people. You get that feeling of legacy even without, I haven't read the story, but there you go. Our Page of Coins. I love how like you get this idea of somebody who's taking care of animals, maybe is industrious, something that I look for in my Page of Coins. And our Knight of Coins looks super dependable, which is something else I look for. Ooh, I love this Queen of Coins. She definitely seems like somebody who's going to make sure you are taken care of and well fed. Again, something I look for in my Queen of Coins. Ooh, the King of Coins is the turtle that has the world on his back. You know what, that makes sense because a lot of times our King of Coins characters are like, have a lot of responsibilities. They often have a lot that they are taking care of / are responsible for, so that totally works. Ace of Swords is a knot with a sword in front of it. This totally works because to me, I have read the story. She looks like she's been stabbed, but I have read the story, and if you look closer at the image, she's actually cutting her own feathers, cutting her own wings. There's a relation to the story here for sure, but that is really a cool image, and it definitely graphically for me works for the Three of Swords, and you still have the storminess in the background with the rain and the lightning. I know this story. I knew it the moment I saw it because I've been studying the runes, but this is Fenrir, I don't know how to say it properly, but the wolf, who is bound. I find it very difficult to look at this image, and I almost wish it were a different image, and I think it's because I have sympathy for the wolf. After having read more of Norse mythology, I just feel like I have a sympathy for the wolf in the image. So this is difficult for me to look at because it shows where he's been stabbed through the jaw to keep his mouth open. And that is such a, I don't know, torture-y kind of thing. I find this card difficult. That being said, having read the story and kind of seeing, I think, what the creator of the deck is doing here, in this part of the story, Fenrir the wolf is basically bound and is held in a holding pattern until later he'll come back and initiate basically the end of the world. So he is taking a break from battle. It's just not a self-imposed break. And I guess as much as I was like pleased to recognize the story right away, I find this difficult for the Four of Swords. But that could be maybe my own stuff. Like maybe the way I look at the Four of Swords is a little bit overly optimistic. I tend to see it as like a choice to step away from battle, a choice to back off, to take a break, to get a breather, to meditate. And a lot of decks, I think, take that more peaceful approach. And this just doesn't feel peaceful to me. So this one's a bit of a struggle, but I get where she's going with it. That's a very long commentary on that one. And the Five of Swords, I did read this story. This is about Isis, Osiris, and Set and how that all went down. But in the Five of Swords here, at the very least, we see somebody in the front who's clearly defeated. We have the 5 blades here with one of them in the arms of who looks to be maybe not a good guy. So you definitely get the feeling of the Five of Swords from this image. And you, of course, get the feeling of the Six of Swords here with somebody rowing and a smaller figure in front. I haven't read this story yet, so that visually still works for me. Seven of Swords, I immediately recognize this as a coyote, which is a trickster energy, which totally works for Seven of Swords. I like to call this the sneaky sneak card. There's like a little sneaky sneak happening usually, or we think there is, so that totally works. Eight of Swords, don't know what's happening here, don't know the story, haven't read it yet, but this definitely feels very restricted and bound, but actually there's this big gap in front of her, so she could leave. Which is what I like to see in my Eight of Swords cards. Okay, I really love this Nine of Swords. It doesn't seem as... It does seem like these people in front are experiencing anxiety, and all the swords are pointing down, and you do get that oppressive feeling. This figure in the back, if you didn't know anything about the story, just looks very peaceful, and you're like, what's going on here? But that is the Oracle of Delphi, and this is the Oedipus story, and Oedipus has been given a prophecy that he's going to kill his father and wed his mother, and so there's a lot of fear and anxiety and a wanting to avoid that happening here. So it makes sense having read the story. Visually, it's sort of there for me, but not fully, but like knowing the story, it works beautifully. And I think that's kind of what I'm trying to share with you guys is like, could you open this and would you get the meaning from just the image? So I'm trying to be really honest about that piece and how I feel. While being aware that I fully plan to read the stories and integrate them into the meanings. I just want to know that if I forget a little bit about the story, there's enough here for me to work with intuitively, and I think there still is. 10 of Swords. So to me, it looks like there is a figure in the water, there's blood on the surface of the water, and there's all these like spears or arrows or something going into the water, so it's less gruesome. Like there's definitely still lots of blood in this image. So it's a very like dramatic 10 of Swords still. Page of Swords. Love her. Love that she's up on a cliff and has a little bird balancing on her finger. I think with the wind going behind her, I think that really works. You really feel the air element in that card. So I love that. Same here. Lots of movement in the Knight of Swords. Definitely moving or charging towards a direction. Dynamic horse posture. Lots of wind and clouds moving in the background. Same thing, lots of air and wind here for the Queen of Swords, and she looks very sort of neutral or severe depending on your perspective. And she's got that sword upright for fairness in her light position, so that works. Oh, and the King of Swords is another creature. Okay, wait, was the... Hold on, I have to remind myself now. Was the King of... Okay, so the King of Cups was the dragon. And the King of Pentacles was the turtle with the world on his back. And now the King of Swords is... I don't know what creature that is. Oh, I should know. I think that's a griffin. The one that's the lion body and the eagle head. Is that a... Oh, man, I always mess that one up. I think that might be a griffin. Somebody's going to correct me in the comments down below, pretty please, if I got that wrong. But that's cool. So it looks like the kings of all of the suits are a mythological creature. I appreciate that, because the worst thing with courts, in my opinion, is when you have all human and then all of a sudden one creature. I'm specifically thinking of the Forest of Enchantment Tarot, and while I totally get it in that deck, and I still love, love, love that deck, it does bug me, the like unbalancedness of it. So I like that all the kings are mythological creatures. And now we have, and I haven't gotten to the King of Wands, but I'm assuming. You know what, I'm going to cheat. Yep, still a creature. Okay, I had to, you guys. I just had to. Ace of Wands, I love this as a paintbrush. This reminds me of Peekaboo Rose's deck. Oh gosh, is it called Tarot of Inspiration? Or, oh gosh, I can't remember the name. I will link it down below, but she made a deck and she used paintbrushes for her wands suit. And I just love that association. I think that's really cool. So if I remember, hopefully I'll remember, I will link Julie Peekaboo Rose's pip deck in the description box down below, because she uses, that's what that made me think of the moment I saw it. So Ace of Wands paintbrush totally works. Don't know what the story is, but it works. Two of Wands, I'm guessing this is Janus. I haven't read the story yet, but that's got to be who that is. It's a two-headed Greek looking image. I think that's cool for the Two of Wands. You get this feeling of like looking at things from different angles. At least that's what kind of comes to my mind. I don't know what else would come to my mind with that image, but I like that one's holding a staff and one's holding a key. I think that could be something to dive into. The Three of Wands looks like climbing a ladder up towards something. And in my head, I almost said, oh, she's climbing into a ship, but I don't know where I got that because I haven't read this story. You do get the feeling of embarking on something or beginning something, so that really works for me. Totally Four of Wands, classic Rider-Waite-Smith kind of setup here, with Four of Wands creating a bit of a wedding bower and what looks like a wedding ceremony. That definitely works. The Five of Wands, very Rider-Waite-Smith configuration here. Six of Wands, again, very Rider-Waite-Smith. We have somebody coming back. I like that this is a more feminine figure coming back, victorious, or with all the wheat in the background and the spears sticking up. That's very Rider-Waite-Smith. The Seven of Wands definitely looks like this dude's tackling stuff that is like you know what I mean? Like it feels like he's got that higher ground, just like we would expect in the Rider-Waite-Smith. Eight of Wands, fast moving energy. Love the bird here because birds are often messengers, and so we often see actually a messenger or a bird in the Eight of Wands with that meaning of messages coming. Nine of Wands, holding down the fort. I think I know this story. I think this is the one about Vasila. Oh, what's her name? Vasilisa? Oh my gosh. The one with Baba Yaga's house in the back, and she gets put to all these tasks, and it's just a lot. It's very overwhelming. I read that story first, or about that story, in Women Who Run with the Wolves, and it really stuck with me. So I'm pretty sure that's what that is, and I think that's great for the Nine of Wands. But also this image, just very Rider-Waite-Smith. She's holding down the fort, so to speak. This Ten of Wands, man, I don't know. This almost feels Ten of Swords-y to me, but at the same time, it's like this person was almost crushed by, you could see this like skull being crushed by all this growth in a way. Almost, so you can feel that sort of burden of responsibility in this image, but yeah, I feel like knowing the story will help. I can't remember if I've read this story or not yet. I don't think I have because it's not really coming to mind. Page of Wands, I love how dynamic and kind of confident this figure is. Knight of Wands, lots of movement, and I love the facial expression here. Queen of Wands, oh, I love her. I think she's Pele. I think she's Pele. And King of Wands, this is a phoenix. I have read this story, or this bit in the Beneath the Moon book, and definitely a phoenix. I think phoenix really works for King of Wands. So let's zoom out. Those are our cards. Now I'm going to give it a proper shuffle because I've been dying to do that. So Oh, it's got that nice whoosh sound. I love that. So it does feel more plasticky than the kind of linen cardstock of something like, say, Pagan Otherworlds. But it feels, again, very, very sturdy. It feels very sturdy. So I'm going to read one of the little snippets from the accompanying book so you can get a feeling for how that reads in just a moment here. But let's take a little flip through of the book that comes with the deck. So we have Welcome, Listener, Seeker, Speaker, which is such a beautiful message when you think of story and verbal tradition and things like that. We have a little introduction to the suits as well as some numerology information. Some information on spreads, a 1 card and a 3 card, a 5 card, and then a sample interpretation. And then we get right into card meanings. I don't know if there's anything in the back. No, it's just card meanings after that. So let's see what we have. The 7 of Cups. I was pretty sure that was Aladdin. So let's take a look. I love that we have these like full color images in here. I think cups were before coins in this deck. Yeah. 7 of Cups. The 7 of Cups shows Aladdin standing before a myriad of fantastical dreams. It's impossible for him to pursue them all, and it is important he makes his decision wisely and quickly. So upright, daydreaming, fantasy, decisions, wishful thinking, and procrastination. And in the reverse, reality, clarity, temptation, confusion, and diversion. So I think that's pretty straightforward. Again, there's just enough here to give you just a little teeny hint at the story. But it does at least identify what the story is. Oh, and that's the other thing I should point out. It says it right on here. I just noticed that. Okay, so on the book here, you'll see the name of the story and where it's from. So in this case, Aladdin, Persia, Arabic folktale. So it talks about both the sort of geography of the story as well as the culture that the author has most associated with the story. And I think it's, again, worth mentioning that some of these stories may come from multiple cultures. And I don't know if she or they, actually don't know the gender of the author. I've got to stop with that. I just assumed, and I shouldn't do that. It looks like they're pretty much all picking one country and one sort of culture. So for example, here the Nightingale says Denmark, and then it says Danish folktale. Or like Sweden and Sami deity, or China, Yao legend. So you get the name of the story, and I love this because if you really want to know these stories or know these, then it's best to go straight to source. So I think that gives you just enough to be able to look it up, right? You're like, okay, well, I want to know about Enkidu and Gilgamesh, which is an Iraq story and a Sumerian mythology. So I could put all of those things into Google and like at least get a start on maybe finding some source material about this story. And I really appreciate that. It's not just like telling you what the story is, it's actually kind of giving you more to go on so you can dive deeper and go right to the source mythologies if that's something you're interested in doing. And I really think that's nice. What I really appreciate, I guess, is that it gives you a bit of a taste of stories, fairy tales, and mythology from all over the world, especially stuff that you might not normally gravitate to look at. And I think that's a good thing. Let me also, I just wanted to do a quick little comparison. So right now, the only other fairy tale deck that I have is Lisa Hunt's Fairytale Tarot. Only I have the English Guidebook, which I managed to get a hold of through a trade, and the Spanish edition of the cards. So what I want to, I guess, answer as far as a question goes about this deck is this going to be my go-to fairy tale deck? Is Tarot of the Divine going to be my go-to? And I have to say, between these two, I find that the cards themselves are depicted in a much more sort of right out of the box, Rider-Waite-Smith friendly way in Tarot of the Divine versus in something like the Fairytale Tarot by Lisa Hunt. And Lisa Hunt's Fairytale Tarot, for example, here is the Hierophant, we have Puss in Boots, but let's pick something a little more obvious, like, okay, see if I can find you another example. Okay, so this is card 16, which is the Tower. It's in Spanish, but this is the Tower, and this is the Emperor's New Clothes. So this doesn't look like a tower imagery. But in Tarot of the Divine, when we had that Rapunzel image, I'm not going to go digging too far, but in the Rapunzel image, it really did look like a tower, right? Like blowing up or like getting hit by lightning. So I really, really like that. I actually think that for that reason alone, I will be quicker to reach for the Tarot of the Divine than I would be to reach for the Fairytale Tarot by Lisa Hunt. So this imagery, super stunning. This deck, the English version of this deck is out of print, which is why I have the Spanish version. This is beautiful, and I really enjoy the stories represented in this book, or in this deck. I will say the stories tend to be, if memory serves, a lot more European and Western in nature, and there was a lot less sort of global mix of stories. I mean, there is some. I believe that's Aladdin. Yeah, that's Aladdin, which is the King of Wands. King of Wands? Bastos? I think that's King of Wands. There was some, but you can tell this deck is much more focused, I think, on stories that are more familiar to me with my personal background. And I really actually, that's nice in some way. Like here we have the Goldilocks and the Three Bears, I think. It's nice that the stories are more familiar, but it is more limiting in that way, right? So I think this would be more like familiarity territory when it comes to fairy tales, whereas I feel like this not only is more usable right out of the gate for the imagery that's represented, but I think it whets the appetite for a lot more diversity in the kind of stories I choose to educate myself about or learn about. So I think this has more of an invitation for that than the Fairytale Tarot by Lisa Hunt does. So that's, I just wanted to share that. Like, is this going to be my new go-to fairy tale deck? I think the answer to that is yes. I would be really curious to hear what you guys think down below. If you have this deck, do you think this works really well right out of the box? Do you have any advice for people thinking about getting this deck? If you don't have this deck, is this one you think you're going to pick up? Do you have another fairy tale deck that you prefer? I'd be super curious to hear. And again, thank you so much to Gina for very generously gifting me with this deck and with the book Beneath the Moon. I almost said I'm over the moon, but it's true. It was just an unintended pun. But I am over the moon to be able to bring this deck into my collection. I am really excited to work with it. I'm going to be working with it right away. So I'm sure I will have more thoughts for you guys in my September show and tell. And I can tell you how it read, what I thought of the experience with the deck. But for now, this is my walkthrough. I almost forgot to show what bag I'm going to be pairing with this deck because Gina wanted to know. And I told myself I was going to show her before this video was done. So I have chosen this bag from Peggy's shop. Yes, I pulled it right out of her shop. She's got a few more, but this is the bag I'm going to pair with this deck. I just liked the blues and the golds. I think it works really good with this moon backing. So that's the deck the bag that my deck is going to be living in. I needed to share. I needed to share for Gina. Thank you so much for joining me. Remember to like this video if you enjoyed the walkthrough. If you have thoughts to share, please comment down below. Subscribe if you are new here for more content about all things tarot and witchy and self-worth. And I think that's it for me from now. If you'd like to book a reading with me, you can always do that over at supportivetarot.com. If you're looking for free readings, check me out on my other channel where I will sometimes do live readings and I also do pick-a-cards and monthly. I will have a link to that channel down below. And that's it. Thank you so much, and may your magic always shine from the inside out. Bye, guys.